postdoctoral studies at 3 different institutions. First, the University of California, Berkeley. Then I got Alexander von Humboldt Fellowship and moved to Germany. And then after that, I came to KU Leuven, where I also got FW Postdoctoral Fellowship. And in 2018, I also got a rather sort of, prestigious fellowship at KU Leuven. It's all called BOF Professorship. And since then, I've been professor, and I'm currently full professor of chemistry and head of the laboratory of bioinorganic chemistry. Sorry about this. And I was also former president of BeWiSe, so from 2012 to 2016, and still trying to be a little bit engaged in the activities as much as I can. Now, experience as evaluator. So I have, as you could see, experience in obtaining different fellowships, or had to obtain them throughout my career. But also, on the other hand, now, since I've been a professor for quite some time, I've been involved in very different schemes as evaluator. So I have experience, experience in evaluating postdoctoral applications on both national and European level. So I've been, for example, a panel member for ERC starting grant since 2021. I'm also panel member for Swiss National Science Foundation, and also for the panel evaluating postdoctoral fellowships, which is also an interesting experience. I've been also a panel member of FWO, which is Flemish Science Foundation, and I was also the chair of VT4 panel, which is a chemistry panel. And I also have more than 15 years of experience in evaluating, for example, Marie Curie postdoctoral fellowships, both as evaluator, and I was also vice chair several times. I was also expert and vice chair in several other European schemes, and Horizon 2020 or Horizon Europe Call, and so on. And I've been also evaluating different proposals for different national research agencies, including FNRS and Germany, US, France, and so on. Okay, so what can I tell you? I mean, from my own experience and from the experience from evaluating all this, or working as evaluator or vice chair or chair for different panels, timing is very important. So you should, if you're planning to apply for a fellowship, you should start on time. And in my opinion, the best time to start considering different options and different possibilities is about a year or year and a half before you finish your PhD. Or if you're in a postdoc, then maybe in the last year of your postdoc, to look for another one. Different funding schemes, as you will see, have different deadlines and different requirements. So if you're planning to bet on multiple horses, you will have to also maybe, even if you have the more or less same project, you will see that they have different, some funding schemes require projects to be written in a specific way. And that takes quite some time to do. And if you start well in advance, that gives you possibility to find the right host and discuss the project with your future host, and also identify the appropriate funding scheme for your fellowship. Okay, it's not moving anymore. Okay, so what are the criteria? Obviously, in science, we tend to say what you publish, but although that's rather sort of, harsh to say, but high quality publications are important for applications, and both quantity and quality count. There is this recent development in many research institutions and funding schemes. They tend to now adopt this. It's called Declaration on Research Assessment, or DORA for short, where they say, well, it's not really only the numbers and age factor and impact factor that count. It's more broader impact of your publication. So they try to sort of change this culture that has been existing so far, that we only look at the metrics. So in that sense, quantity is important, but quality as well, which is independent of the metrics, is also now being important. Your research experience, what have you done, and how experienced you are in particular area that you're active in. Quality of the host group. If you're applying for a fellowship, they will also look who are you going to work for. Mobility as well. Mobility is also a criterion that is often being asked. And obviously quality of the project. Many funding schemes are also want you to have a strong proposal to write. But as I say, you will see the different funding schemes have different forms that they required, and you have to sort of adapt it to a particular funding scheme that you're applying for. So let's discuss some possibilities. So if you're in Belgium, there are postdoctoral funding on a national level. So there are in Belgium 2 main funding agencies. One is FWO, which is responsible for Flemish part, and FNRS, which is responsible for Wallonia part. And they mainly give 3 years postdoctoral fellowships within Belgium, but within this postdoctoral fellowship, you can also ask for international mobility or international stay of 6 to 12 months, and they're actually being strongly encouraged. There are junior and senior fellowships. So for junior type, you cannot be, your PhD should be less than 3 years. So it should be less than 3 years post PhD. For senior is between 3 and I think 6. And if you're more than 6 post PhD experience years, then you're not eligible, I think, for either one. So these projects or applications are mainly reviewed by panels. So these funding agencies have particular panels. So you have to decide which panel to send your application to. And then the panel decides which fellowships will be sent to the second round. So in the first round, many of them will be eliminated. Not many, but I think at least half. And then a certain number of fellowships then goes to the second round, where then they're also being sent to the external evaluator, and the applicant is then invited for an interview, and then together with the interview and opinion of the panel, which is listening you during the interview, and external evaluator comments, they will decide who gets a fellowship or not. I think the success rate is about 20 to 25% to get at least FWO postdoctoral fellowship. So candidates are ranked by the panel. Each panel has a guaranteed number of fellowships they can award. However, they also have reserve list, and in particular for senior fellowships, some people tend not to accept them because they have other options or got different jobs. So often people who are on the reserve list tend to then end up getting the fellowship. So don't despair if you're on the reserve list. The chances are often actually rather high that you get the fellowship. If in the case you were ranked or relatively highly ranked, so you pass to the interview phase and you were ranked either on the reserve list or below reserve list, but relatively high enough, but you did not get the funding because there are limited funds, or you were not lucky enough to make it just by small margin, universities often then give support to those highly ranked candidates who are not successful by giving them 1 year bridging funding so they can apply the following year, right? So make sure you check with university. Sometimes this is automatic depending on university, but sometimes you have to make sure whether this bridging funding exists and can be given to you. So these are competitive, as I said, because in particular, they're open to the whole entire world. I mean, obviously, it's a funding in Belgium, and many people who are already in Belgium tend to apply because they're aware of it. But now more and more candidates from all over the world apply, particularly those who actually want to work for a particular group at some Belgian university. And often these are strong foreign candidates, and because they're foreign candidates, they have, mobility, which is also a very important factor, and they actually make a high chance of getting them if they're a strong candidate. So I think the years where you could do PhD in the same group and then continue doing a postdoc in the same group, thanks to one of these fellowships, are over. I think in the past it was much easier. Nowadays, I have a feeling that the panel doesn't really support that type of sort of lack of mobility. So what are the selection criteria I just mentioned? So you can have maximum 3 years of postdoctoral seniority for junior, or 6 for senior ones. All nationalities are welcome. So they're evaluating candidate. So there are 2 main criteria. So you as a candidate, what is your potential, capability, research skills, background, independence, mobility, and so on. So all these criteria being carefully looked at. And then project, how feasible, how original, how important it is, and so on. They are 3 years fellowship, and they give you a pretty good monthly salary, and also a bench fee that you can actually ask for up to certain levels. So it's also a nice amount of money that you can actually then use to either travel to conferences or buy whatever stuff that you need for your research. So in terms of preparation and effort, well, obviously you have to draft an application, and it's about 10 pages all over. So it's a serious application. An interview is also part of it, in case you pass the first stage, as I mentioned. And obviously, close engagement of the host group is strongly advised, because you will need to write a project actually together, not together, but you will have to make a project that will be a sort of supported by your host. So help of the host is strongly advised, even if you are coming from different institution. Make sure you are contact the host well in advance so they can help you with drafting the project. I drafted some here. This is all available online, but just to get you an idea, these are the evaluation score sheets that the panel is working with, and that actually this is how we are being graded. So often when you draft a fellowship, it's important to know what is panel looking for. So you can actually tailor your application more or less to fit to these requirements. So as I said, for the individual postdoctoral fellowships, candidate part weighs a bit more than the project. So here, candidates being ranked on 2 parts. The first part is at scientific contribution of the candidate. So here you can see they want to see what is your sort of contribution to the current state of the art, what are your achievements, quality and impact of your publications, scientific reputation, and so on. And if in case for senior postdocs, they're also looking at scientific independence, more or less, and mobility. You see, mobility is an important factor, right? So, and then depending on what you wrote in your application, and they will judge you from scale from 0 to 7, 7 being the excellent or outstanding. So this is first part that they look, and the second part for candidate, they also look at your motivation and your competencies. So you have to write a motivation letter, which is about a 1-page sort of like motivation statement, and why you do want to do this, what you do, and what is your motivation to continue doing this project, or wanting to continue doing this project. And also they will be looking at different expertise that you, so also teaching. So they look at are you able to teach, or teaching activities, and any activities, membership of scientific organizations. So if you do reviewing activities, basically make sure that you mention in this application anything, and you can read here what they're looking at, so you can actually try to think about all these activities that you might be involved in, and make sure you mention them in your application, right? So I advise you, if you apply for fellowship, it's always good to look at the criteria and what is panel actually evaluating, so that you can tailor your application accordingly, right? And also, this is the case for FWO, but I assume for FNRS is very similar, or you can find it in internet. This is freely available. Many people are not aware of it, but you can find this in internet. You actually can you also have to write a project, obviously, and here project is also very important. They're looking at the scientific quality, relevance, originality, and also how feasible it is, what is the research methodology, and so on, right? So again, project also is rated from 0 to 7, and from my experience, the successful candidates are somewhere on the scale around 6 or above. So for you to actually get the fellowship, you have to be in the excellent or outstanding range. So make sure then, obviously, to take seriously both parts, because they're being averaged, and you have to be in excellent or outstanding range in order to successfully obtain the fellowship. Now, besides this national funding agency, certain universities also have some postdoc fellowship schemes, not many, but they do exist. For instance, at Leuven, there is something called PDM, or Post-Doctoral Mandate, which is 1 year duration. Success rate is not too bad. You can apply maximum years after a PhD degree. So this is not limited only to the people who are doing PhD at Leuven. I mean, candidates from other universities are also welcome, but they have to demonstrate that they're willing to apply for, let's say, either FWO, fellowship here, or some other type of fellowship, because they want you to sort of support you for 1 year while you're actually looking for external funding, right? So this is a sort of like a bridging, fellowship to make sure that you strengthen your CV and make you more competitive to apply for external postdoctoral funding. They also have, different universities also have different mobility programs. So you can ask, for instance, if you are already at a certain university, to go, so you can get financial support to do research stays outside of the Belgium. And so basically, if you already maybe have a postdoctoral fellowship within your university and you want to go abroad, you can look at your university website. So Leuven is this one, but I'm sure other universities also have them. You can look whether they're sponsoring or supporting your stays abroad, and often they do even up to 1 year, actually. So I think it's a good thing to check whether you can find one of those schemes that could support your mobility. Now, there is something that I mentioned for people that finish PhD or have already a postdoctoral experience and are looking for funding to do, again, something that resembles postdoc, but it's not strictly speaking a postdoc. It's something that more and more universities nowadays have. It's called Industrial Research Manager. So this is, again, university funding. And this is a bit specific, but there are people who find this very interesting, because it's in a way, it's not a postdoc, but it's a post-PhD or postdoc in position. But your task is to support and be involved in valorization of the research, to bring it to sort of technology transfer level. And here you would be acting as a bridge between university and industry, and you would be responsible to set up collaboration and project applications with companies. And this is a permanent position, but again, you can, people who are interested, there are funds. Many universities actually have this particular funding to support this type of research activities. Here you also have to write an application, and but here you have to really have a talent or affinity towards, valorization plans. You have to have a clear idea or affinity how to transfer scientific research to industry. And here again, it's very useful to talk to the groups that you could clearly identify. So you're not doing research yourself, you're actually supporting research groups at particular department or particular sort of faculty to make the research sort of to transfer the research more towards application and industrial level. So if you have some previous competence in collaboration with different industry, this is obviously a plus. And how does this work? Well, it's a consortium of different professors, of PIs, who should be supporting your application. And then so you have to have a network of different PIs at a certain department who would be interested in supporting you. And if you attract then this funding, then you'll be going through different selection procedures, and you defend your application, and you might then get this permanent position. And now international fellowships, if you want to go actually abroad. Well, as I mentioned, many national postdoctoral fellowships, such as FWO or FNRS, if you have it, if you once get it, they will also actually support your research stays abroad. So, as I said, you can, once you have it, you can always apply in the first or second year of your postdoctoral fellowships. You apply for a sort of mobility grant, and often the chance is very high that you actually get it. It's an application where you have to also say what you will be doing abroad, in which group, and you have to sort of motivate this application. Why do you want to go abroad? But it's not much effort, actually. It's not a real project. It's just sort of a few pages of really explaining what would be the added value of this stay abroad for your postdoctoral fellowship. And then there is obviously a Marie Curie postdoctoral fellowship, which I will talk about in details in a few seconds. And then there are also research domain specific funding channels. So depending on the domain, there are many different funding schemes. For instance, there are a lot of schemes for funding, let's say, brain research or cancer research, which you have to check and find them. Then also there are mobility fellowships from foreign governments. So foreign governments who then support people to bring the talents from different countries to their own country. And also some private organizations doing this. And if you're interested in going to a certain country, you should then maybe definitely ask your local host, and because they might be much better aware of local and national funding opportunities, or they can obviously provide their own funding. This is always the last resort. They might have their own projects that can actually finance your stay. There are also university bilateral agreements between different universities and countries, so you have to check that. And there are many vacancies that are often published, and this is just one example website that you can check. So if you're really interested in going abroad, you can, as I say, bet on multiple horses or explore different options. Some of them are mentioned here. So this is not moving. Okay. So some funding agencies and some international mobility, for instance, are mentioned here. This is not exclusive list. It's just sort of some examples that might be sort of best known or more relevant. So one is this BeWiSe. It's a research fellowship that is given to Belgian citizens to do actually research at American universities. You have to have outstanding academic record. You have to speak obviously good English language, and it's for research stays in the US. So next deadline is, I think, October 31st, 2023. And there is they have a very strict time sort of limits where you have to go. So you can check this here. Fulbright, obviously, it's an excellent also opportunity. This is for postdoctoral research or also for university lecturing grants, also given to Belgium or Luxembourg citizens. And this is for duration between 3 months and 1 year. And there's some deadlines also which have to be respected. For Germany, the best known fellowships are von Humboldt, Alexander von Humboldt Fellowship. Here you have a free choice of the host, but it has to be in Germany. They're very generous, in terms of salary and travel, mobility allowance. It's, again, for postdoctoral states, it's given to all disciplines, and you can, again, choose different periods between 6 to 24 months. For UK, there is a Newton Fellowship, which is known, and again, here you can pick the universities that you sort of want and identify the host. And now this Newton scheme has been constantly changing, So now it has been increased for 24 months to 36 months, and you can find more information. Now they're doing this jointly, this Newton organization, together with the Royal Society in the UK. And so you can find more information under this link, which is in this slide. Okay, it's not moving. Okay, now I'll maybe, because Marie Curie Individual Fellowship is the one that is probably the best known. I'll just maybe, because I have quite extensive experience with this one, I'll go here into bit more details. This scheme has been undergoing through many transformations in the last, 10, 15 years since I know it. And today, I think there are two different schemes that exist within Marie Curie Individual Fellowship. There is a regular European postdoctoral fellowship. So this actually finances mobility within Europe. But so you have to go from one European university to another in different country. And there are also global fellowships. So this is mobility from Europe to a country outside of the Europe. But then you have to have mandatory 1-year return period. So imagine you apply for 2 years to spend in the States, but then there is a mandatory 1-year return period to the host university in Europe, because they obviously want some transfer of knowledge to occur. So the idea is to go to the different university abroad, outside of Europe, you learn something, and then the idea is to bring this knowledge back to Europe. So this is what they actually financing. So they want to see also some return on the investment, as I call it. So just not simply for you to learn something, but also for European university to benefit something from your knowledge. And is this working? Let's see. As I said, so European fellowship, global fellowship, make sure you apply to the right one. And I think duration is between 12 or maximum 36 in case of global fellowship. They're also very generous in terms of payment. They pay for living and mobility and travel and career allowance. But here the key is mobility. It's mandatory. So you can't be, so they have very strict mobility requirements. You cannot be, and I think you should look under this link here, how they define it. I think there's some, so you have to definitely go from one country to another. You cannot be within the same country. But then the country that you're going to, you cannot been spending, or you could have not, I mean, the requirement is that you can be already in the country, but not for more than 12 months in the last, I think, 3 years or something like that. That also means that you can actually, let's say you find a host in some country, let's say you want to go to Spain, for example, you can already be in Spain and we're doing postdoc in Spain, and then together with your host, you can still prepare Marie Curie Fellowship within the first 12 months of your stay in Spain, right? So that's perfectly okay. So you don't have, you can be physically present in that country for which you're applying fellowship, but not for longer than, I think, 12 months. So you have to be then, quick. You come there and say, okay, I want to try this Marie Curie Fellowship. That counts. And these are very good scenarios, because once you're really there, you can really closely work with the host on preparing a good fellowship. So preparation effort, it's actually, well, from my own experience or experience of people in my group who applied for it, it's a few weeks, several weeks needed, but I mean, you need to start earlier and have a good idea. And I think the engagement and the commitment of the host is essential, because you will see there's a lot of information in this application for which you will not be able to fulfill them unless you have a strong support or information provided by the host. These fellowships typically have deadlines in September, and I think next one for this year is 13th of September 2023. But as I said, there is information already published there, so you can look it up. Now, for the proposal, the general advice is to carefully look for the guide for applicants, which is available online. You should read it, you should understand it. They call it the Bible, because all information which is in there is really essential for you to prepare a strong application, because you will, in order to have a successful application, you have to address all criteria and all sub-criteria really blindly. So everything that they ask you, should be in this application. And I will show you what I mean by that, because this is how you will be judged, or how your application will be judged. So there are three main criteria. One is excellence, and this one weights the most, so it's 50% on excellence. Then impact is 30% of weight of your application, and implementation 20%. Now, within excellence, so there is an overall threshold of 70%, but my experience, so the maximum that you can get, it's 100%, obviously, but in the last few years, these schemes became extremely competitive, and you should really definitely have more than 90, 92, 93%, sometimes even 94%, in order to get the fellowship. So you cannot. So you see that everything they're asking you here should be addressed, because if you're losing few percent on some really information that you forgot to mention, all the effort will be gone. So you really have to make sure that everything is clearly addressed. And I will show you, for instance, what they will be asking you. But this is all, as I said, mentioned in Guide for Applicants. So criteria number one is excellence, as they call it. So this is the one which is weights the most. It's the most crucial aspect, but not more important than the other criteria, because you can, again, as I said, if you're losing some points on the other criteria, you will never reach the level of 90% that they are actually asking for. So research project is a very small part of it, actually. So you'll see that here, if you look, it's only one quarter of it. So this is sometimes for scientists difficult to understand, because we all think, okay, research project is the most important thing. Actually, not for Marie Curie. Okay, it's important that the research project is novel and multidisciplinary and so on. But this is often read by an evaluator who is not specialized in the discipline, right? So it's not this that really you have to put too much sort of effort in giving details about the research project. You just have to somehow demonstrate that the research project is excellent, because that's what they're looking. Is this an excellent research project? Then the second criteria is transfer of knowledge and training. So they want to see, this is very important, because these schemes are about transfer of knowledge and about training. So these are training schemes. So you have to here list the objectives. What are you going to learn, actually? How you will be trained, and in your new host institution, right? And also they're looking, okay, it's not just that you'll be trained in this technique or that technique or this research sort of area. You will also have to mention, okay, I'm going to also be trained on some sort of soft skills, how to write papers, or how to present, or how to write grants, and so on. Quality of supervision is also a criteria. They will be looking, okay, who is the host institution? What is their expertise? Even if they're well known, even if you're applying to some super, Nobel Prize winning person, and you assume, of course, they're known, and I don't have to really convince anybody that they are, high quality. You have to have this information to say, okay, what is their track record? What is their H-index projects? How actually experienced are they in training young researchers? So this is a Marie Curie, it's a training scheme. So they want to see or be convinced that you will be well trained there. And then another criteria is capacity of the researcher to reach a position of professional maturity in research. What does it mean? This is about you and your skills. So you have to convince them that you have potential, that they have a clear vision what you want to do and what you want to become, and also list maybe concrete steps how you plan to achieve it. Criterion number 2 is impact, and this is, in my opinion, probably the most difficult part to write for young researchers, because it's a bit vague. What is impact? Many young people, or many people, are actually not trained to think in terms of impact. And impact consists of 2 parts. One is enhancing research and innovation related human resources, skills, and working conditions to realize the potential of individuals and to provide new career perspectives. So this is what they want you to show. What does it actually mean? Well, that actually means you have to think carefully, what are the benefits if fellowship is awarded, and who will benefit, so how you will be benefiting from it. So what is the impact of this money they're spending on your own future career, on your development, right? How will this impact your development, your training, and so on? And also how it will impact also the bit broader area, society, and so on. And then the second criterion is how you will communicate and disseminate your results. And this is becoming also in recent years very important. They want to see that the broader public will also benefit from this. So remember, these are the money coming from taxpayers' budget. They also want to see that the broad public is also influenced by this or by benefits. So you have to show outreach activities. How will we reach broader audience? Be concrete as much as you can. You know, the very often the generic sort of sentences are often being penalized if you really say, okay, I'll just say, well, I'll go to schools. You have to, and so if you're not specific, they will see it through. So you have to be, specific and how you will organize and these outreach activities, how will you reach broader audience and so on. Potential exploitation of results and IP management is also needs to be there, and dissemination. So what is dissemination? How you will disseminate your research, papers, conferences. Again, you have to be concrete. For us, for scientists, often it's obvious. We always say, oh, we'll publish and we go to conferences, but often they want to see, okay, to which conferences are you planning to go? I mean, or which journals are you planning to sort of send your papers to? And so the more concrete, the better. And then the last criterion is implementation. So here you will need obviously a concrete input from your host in order to address this criterion properly. You will need a work plan, which has to be logical, feasible, coherent. You have to show work packages, milestones, deliverables, what do you want to achieve and when. And now the input from the host is important because it comes down to management structures and procedures, how the project will be managed. So what is the structure in the host group, who is doing what, who is supervising whom, who is responsible for daily supervision, who is monitoring the research. What is important, how, if there are certain risks that your project may not be working or that idea you had is not working, how are you going to mitigate this? What is the contingency plan? What is the plan B for such cases? Then another criterion is how is institutional environment appropriate? So you have to show them, okay, the institution where I'm going to, planning to go has everything that I need to do this research. So you have to talk to the host institution and tell them, okay, what are the facilities who are there, which are present there? What is the concrete infrastructure and so on? You can also, within this fellowship, go somewhere else. You can ask for secondment and go for 3 or 6 months to another organization, another country, even abroad. If you're planning to do that, this has to be mentioned in the application, and you have to also then mention the relevant information about this other host institution that you're planning to visit during your postdoctoral stay in the host institution. And then again, the last criterion is competencies, experience, and complementarity. So here you have to describe the active contribution of your host to your research and training. So depending on the type of individual fellowship, whether it's European or non-European, you have to see how, for the global fellowships, you will have to have this return phase. So you'll have to discuss this with 2 different hosts, right? One outside of Europe and the one where you will be returning to, and maybe you will also have to need letter of commitment if applicable. I think often you have to have a CV of the experienced researcher. I think also from a Curie fellowship, but in general, if you need to write a CV, here's some general advice that I can give you. I think you should try to sell yourself, as you say, it's the best you can. I mean, this, depending on how long this CV can be, depending on the funding scheme, use the space wisely. Anything that makes you stand out should be highlighted. So any prizes, awards, You can ask your PhD mentor or your future host or whoever knows you well to help you make the best CV possible. So your excellence, your research capacity, your career potential will be largely judged based on your CV, right? So make sure that you mention there everything that you can, that highlights why you're an outstanding candidate. If you have any research career gaps or unconventional paths, you should clearly explain them, because nowadays you have more and more of those, and that's perfectly okay that people have some gaps due to different reasons, so that they have to be clearly mentioned and motivated. In certain CVs, they actually want you to describe some more and more in a qualitative way your major research accomplishments. So describe what are your major research accomplishments or your major accomplishments in general. So, so this is a more qualitative way to describe your accomplishments, and you should make sure that you know how to do that. Highlight any mobility during PhD or afterwards. Also highlight publications as the first author, as they actually often demonstrate what often needs to be judged is independent thinking. So if you're first author on papers, it's often assumed that you carried that research more or less, independently. They also look for leadership qualities. What does that mean? Well, any projects you applied for, any meetings you organized, any students you supervised actually contribute to your leadership qualities, and also demonstrates that you have capacity to acquire new knowledge. What does that mean? Well, either by changing groups or by, that means, I always say it's easy to be successful once if you're in one institution. That can be often attributed to, obviously, to your skills, but also it could be that you were lucky, you worked on a good project, or you had a very good mentor who was, working on a good project, and then you were successful. But if you move to a new organization, then you have to also prove that you can be you can acquire new knowledge, can be successful. So I said it's much more difficult to be successful twice or three times, because then it really is not luck anymore. Then it's really clearly to you, because you managed to be successful wherever you ended up. So I think if you moved institutions, make sure you highlight that you were successful wherever they placed you actually. And so for Marie Curie individual fellowships, take-home message: be attentive, like for any fellowship you're applying. Be attentive to the details, address all criteria and sub-criteria, be as concrete and clear as possible. Find the right balance between being confident but not arrogant. That's not easy, I know, but it's a skill. In case, for example, here I'm talking about Marie Curie fellowship, you can, if in case your application is not successful and you are actually looking at the final report that you get, you often get strengths and weaknesses, what the evaluators thought was strong and what was weak in your application. If the same criterion is mentioned under strength and weaknesses, that means there is certain lack of logic there. Then you might have a chance to readdress the final decision and file the complaint and say, listen, I think there is some mistake here. It cannot be under the strength mentioned. The applicant published, has a very good publication list, and under weaknesses, it says, well, the publication record is not so strong. So if you see something like that, it's obviously a red flag, and then you have a chance to readdress, and your proposal might be reevaluated. So this happens quite often, but it happens. And so if you don't succeed, do not despair. After all, you are playing in the Champions League. All these fellowship schemes are highly competitive for highly sort of successful applicants. And obviously there is always a second chance, right? And I wish you all good luck, because you will need it wherever you apply it. And I tend to think, and I like this I think it's a Chinese proverb, the harder you work, the luckier you get. So you will need both hard work and luck. And thank you very much.
Wow, thank you very much, Tatjana.
Yeah.
For these, yes, a lot of applause there in the chat. But no questions yet. However, I think there might be some questions. Come on. So if people can raise their hand also, we can let you ask the question. Here.
I
Mire de
stop
Bond.
sharing, right?
Yeah.
Let me stop sharing.
You can stop sharing, yeah.
Okay, okay.
Then we can see you full screen. Also, other people can turn on their cameras. So the question in the chat from Mire de Bond, are there also fellowships without Belgium University involved? Yeah, so that you can only do your postdoc abroad.
Yes, I think that these are all these fellowships that I said. If you want to go to the States, you apply for Fulbright. If you want to go to the Germany, you look for Alexander von Humboldt. If you want to go to Switzerland, there is this fellowship called Ambizione. This is for you have to obviously identify the country that you want to go to, and then look what are the funding schemes within that particular country. And you should also first find the host, right? It starts with the host. You will always need a host wherever you go. And then with the host, you discuss, okay, where can I apply for funding in your country? Nothing to do with Belgium.
No. Yeah, and also a tip there I can give from personal account. So if you contact the host, visit them in real life. Don't do it through Skype, because if you will spend there 2 or 3 years, and there's not a fit with your host, not only the PI, of course, but also the postdocs, it's a tricky thing. So I highly recommend that you touch base there with the people you will be working with. Yes. A question from Setara. I worked in industry for a while. How does this time count as the years after PhD?
Yeah, it counts. I think it does. I think the industrial, this is, I think, these non-conventional paths that are, perfectly fine, actually. And there are many people that do that. Also, I don't know, the recent Nobel Prize in Chemistry to Ben Faringa, he was also, after his PhD and postdoc, worked in industry for many years, and then he came to university as a postdoctor, or as I think assistant professor or something. So that counts. Okay, your publication list may not be as long as somebody who was in academia, but if you're just can say what you did. So this is a research accomplishment, but if you did something meaningful during that time in industry, that's also perfectly fine. So this is where I'm saying now, more and more they're looking for qualitative description of your research accomplishments and not just publication lists. So this is your chance to say, well, I work in industry, so I did all these interesting things that now I can apply, for this new postdoc.
Definitely. I think patents can also count like publications in a way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, patents are, very highly, appreciated. Definitely, yes.
Yeah, and in some research fields also, for instance, engineering, presentations at top events also count highly.
Yes,
it's not only publications or presenting a poster, but like oral presentations at high conferences also count for many points there, I think. Yeah. Invited lectures.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, sure. All this, make sure
Please,
you mention.
are there more questions? Or you can also raise your hand, then we'll address your question. Geraldine. For FWO and MSc, so Marie Curie, is it possible to propose a project with a main host in Belgium or a country in Europe, and the co-host in a non-European country? Non-European. This one I'm not sure.
And the co-host, so I think, if I understood correctly, so let's divide this. So FWO, it has to be a Belgium host, but in your application, you can already say, within these 3 years, I want to spend 1 year in Canada, let's say, right? So, and you explain why this stay in Canada is beneficial for your project. So it has to be meaningful, right? So you say, okay, the host in Canada will help me with this, and that to accomplish my research plan that I'm proposing here. So it can be already in there. You can already mention that in your application. And same with Marie Curie, it's a condiment, they call it, that you say, okay, within these 2 years or 3 years Marie Curie fellowship, you want to go a few months. If it's just for a few months, then it's a condiment within the European fellowship. But if you say, I want to spend 2 years in Canada, then it's global fellowship. So you have to, distinguish between
the global fellowship is a separate one, right?
Yeah, it's a global fellowship. Marie Curie, global fellowship. Then you say, okay, I want to spend 2 years in Canada, and when I come back, I'll be 1 year in Belgium. So then it's global. But if it's the other way around, say, okay, I want to be 2 years in whatever European country, and then go a few months somewhere abroad, that's a condiment, then it's still European.
Okay, how is with the Brexit, how is the UK perceived? So is it more difficult?
Still associated country. So I think it's still there. I mean, still negotiating, but I think it's still possible to apply for UK. Even on the ERC level, they're still applying. I've seen applications from ERC as well. Switzerland not. I think they've been kicked out.
Switzerland not. No. Okay.
For now,
thank you.
Kicked out. Yeah.
We have a question with a raised hand.
Yeah.
Deepak.
Sorry, I was just about typing. Maybe I can also directly ask the question. I was wondering, maybe as an evaluator, if you comment on the relative impact that different fields offer. For example, I can imagine that funding is probably common in different fields, like the funding pool is common. So someone who applies for funding to aid in the improved understanding of cancer biology might have direct impact to the public than an engineering application, which doesn't have a direct relevance, at least in the next few years. So how are evaluators kind of comparing different fields if the impact is different with respect to the timeline?
Well, what I forgot to mention, for instance, difference, I mean, at FWO, they have this also interdisciplinary panel, right? So you actually, I think it's very important when you decide that for which fellowship, if you, let's say, you want to apply for FWO, right? I mean, there are different panels. And also within any funding scheme, there are different panels. And so, and if this is what you're saying now, you're actually doing one thing, but you're impacting another field, and you cannot, and you want this to be somehow properly recognized, you can go to interdisciplinary panel and say, listen, what I am doing is this, but I will impact this, many different fields. Then maybe it would be wise to choose interdisciplinary panel. But choice of panel is also very, very important. I mean, you should choose panel that you feel will really appreciate whatever you are trying to convince them is important in your fellowship.
But would it maybe a follow-up question, if that's possible?
Yeah, sure.
Is it known a priori as to how much proportion of funding goes to different disciplines, or is that an internal knowledge?
Well, I think all the schemes, so for instance, Marie Curie or FWO, they fund all types of research, right? And I think they make it, at least I think on European level, proportional to the number of applicants. So if you say, so the more people apply, the more money will be given. So they're trying really not to disfavor any discipline. So if you have 100 people applying in a certain discipline, and there will be, like, let's say 3 times, I mean, the budget is linked to a number of applicants. If you have only 20 people applying, then the budget will be smaller. But the success rate should be more or less same for all disciplines, right? So I think this is how it works mostly for them.
Okay,
so
I think the final point answers my question. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, more questions for Tatjana? If there are no more questions, I would like to thank you again. That's very clear.
Thanks very much.
And I made a recording, and Tatjana also will provide the slides. Thank you for that also.
I'll send it to you.
Yes, thank you very much. Everybody's saying in the chat. So we will conclude. I just want to mention again that we have our General Assembly of BeWiSe, and this is on the 16th of June. 16th of June. At the Royal Institute of Natural Sciences in Brussels, the Dinosaur Museum. You're very welcome to join this. You can have more information if you go to our website, bewise.be. So I hope to see you there in real life then. And I want to thank the speaker again. Thanks, Tatjana.
Thanks very much. Good luck, everybody.
And good luck with your proposals.
Thanks. Thank you.
And see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. And I also want to remind you that we will send you more information about the General Assembly and how to register soon by newsletter. Thanks a lot for participating. We will upload the recording on our YouTube channel, and we will also share the presentation with everyone that registered to attend the event. Thank you.
Bye.